get rolling in a tactile ball. Let's get rolling in a tactile ball. Let's get rolling in a tactile ball. A ball.
Let's get brawling in a tactile ball, where that crew engraving gruesome debased things in really teeny letters on scratched up rings and then bashing inks in the head. Corporation disincorporated, pass the corpse. Flossing Eagle is a little winch-headed micromouse named Stylin Maru. He batted down my hatches for over 15 years before I bested him in open battle, closed contest, and indie beatdown comedy hour, starring Patty Prance. I knew Patty back when he was Patrick Mahan Mahanian, and he were a hard case back then. But by now, he is like Lord Destave himself, depraved and minding his manners in a topical glue cream factory in East Kennebunkport, Switzerland, and he has his head too big for his britchers. Nair, weren't you start clutching them grunnies at me boil? I just loved coming up with crimpening baskets for God each Wednesday night, with my harbor salvation being just part of the board and cream of my Trundle Dead Variety Hour and comedy shop. I sold used trinkets, disavowed practices, and even silent wedges between vacillation and hate. I had one diameter in south and the other 55 in back, and I led the most house storage pledge of porridge cream and parlor defense before backboarding my other two Earthstone Taylor destitution planks on one and the other side of my buttered bread. I broke beam at the nearest marsh marshals, the sheriffs of the swamp. I would need their hovercraft if I were to arrive in CERN in time for the lecture, and in 3-5, the conference. There sure were a rift in the Sheriffshire, something about lucidity and battening hatches, but I left that boat on the shore when I smelled what the gallery cook were baking. I hated the banking sector since I first filed off my fingernails and hid them in boss's falafel order. This is a kiddie experience in and through the border, because we had a big pile of wet leaves that we had to dry out in the rain and the summer snow, and nobody helped me not to say anything. I had creditors piling up like the unvarnished mulch, and I had to do pretty much any bagel in history to get the violent flocks I needed from the furnace minister, and then I even had to bake the guy a scullery cake just to get him to float back to his office and file the actual paperwork. Grease the gears of the crane of eyesight just enough, and that copper-embossed lark will ferret magical birth for you. I believe it with every cider of my bean, and I want that for you to Yule. Too pretty baby boo-boo. I got a big canyon with traffic and beer. Heave ho, heave ho. I crundied my craddock with paddles of fear and of sea salt and foamy girth. I have a truck with no eye-widening plier protection or miniature Scuttle Bradfords and commemorative plates emblazoned with filigree. Ye, take my meaning, or do you hang a frozen cow corpse from a hooky to see what many pounds of the feed it bring ye? Do you ken the Bargley Bowl, or the bridging hooks, or Tellaride cracks, or crassening levers, or wool-thickening agents with Wylaminian anti-Zanget 5, a newly hallucinated bread machine and based lever that plugs the gully with a ribbon stare, and a glistening mall radio that beeps in on every hour, on the hour, and that's how you know what beep it can be, even when it's beeping late at night. And have you ever turned violent in an instant when you mean to become indigo? Why did we whirl so wrong? I batted it about in my mind with long eyelashes, and 6 young suitors came a-courting, but none of their nozzles were suitable grips, so I had to squeeze them out one rod at a time. And it burned, I say to thee all and sundry, and pule puipo nodis, all about it and all about it. I did a rip crimp, but it boiled me over much. I tried a slash filament, but it disturbed my aunties so much, they sent me Crimpening Cards at the hospital. I fled from a Clenched Whale, but they could follow me even through the air as long as the moon was high. And so I fled from branch to branch, fire quail seeking me out, and little trails of every evaporated moonfish was flesh-like reduction in my crying Babylon twirler chant. I had 6 chewed chunks of chard and ashen H's. I had a hatch in back of the earth, and a smurflock in hall, and a smurflock in hall, and a locked-up smurf in the hallway, before we could collapse the left hand of the uppermost top of the lower layer of the bottom tunnel. We had a degree of support hatch valve release that steamed us in the face, but simultaneously gave us the will to continue. Our greased leavening was pure at the o'clock, but by the time of day, it was fully inoculated, and it had no calculation for how much calculus would build up upon it, and they named other stuff that was gross after other mask things that suck. So between the dentistry and the fishing cube, we had a turkey pie that didn't look edible, but actually consumed more energy than it produced. Thus, these parasitic pot pies could be the ultimate weight loss solution for generations of slimy Americans. We coated 16 improper sheep glisteners in the night, which we found in the back of a refrigerated porthole deep in Spaghetti Town, where I don't usually like to go, because I'm more of a pasta person, and I like some Roy Benatti and some robustness to my reputations when seeking such sustenance, for the starchiness was and unseals my liver and my heart simultaneously in ways that modern medical science is only begun to be dismayed by studying. And when they opened up that guy's fossil tooth, there was a miniature stomach inside. And when they used an electron microscope to map out the inner fishing of that tissue, they found it was Clover and Twain by Barrister of Bonnet Sales Hat, Shrimp of Frog Dino Tanner. And to top it all off, there was an exclusionary reduction hatch hidden inside it that ran upon implosion, seeking to find a vacuum of negative air pressure strong enough to boost its way windward. And that's actually where Cleveland comes from, but you won't hear that on the mainstream media. You'll be stuck in some kind of wind curtain, windsock, wind funnel, and you'll be like, sure. is Wendy here? And it's like, yeah, you're in freaking Cleveland. They're just blowing all this hot air so you don't notice. And my friends, enemies, fish pets that don't help. But over here, what I'm saying, all the spiders of the world unite. We must learn to tie your shoes as one nation, or we will become 700 different nations with slippers and sandals in it. That isn't the world I signed up for when I was birthed, without my consent. And it's not the world I think you signed up for. And so we are going to delve deep into the underworld and the outer sky. And we're going to be like, is this a better place to raise our oats? And that'll be like, no, you'll be crushed by rocks. Or no, you will not have enough oxygen in the air to breathe, and you'll be bombarded by cosmic rays and die. And it's like, okay. So what is the Earth trying to tell us? It wants us to leave, but to like stay here. And I don't know how to process this information. They're like, you're forgetting something. I'm like, I am. And they're like, there's a big vinegar bug and there's a small vinegar bog. Which do you go to? And I was like, if I had the choice, I would go to both. And then I would dig a tunnel from the big one to the small one. That would make the small one the same size as the big one. And then they are going to be like the kidneys of the Earth. These hidden things in the bog, and they're like, we shouldn't let this kid go near the bog because he has ideas that are on par or exceed our best ideas. And so they put a bag over my head and took me in the opposite direction of the bog. But this overcorrection proved to be their undoing because I could tell they were such little stimps that they would take me on the opposite direction of the bog. So I just went the way they took me for 14 days and 22 nights until I found the deepest bog ever. And I tried to dig my tunnel, but they were waiting for me, and they leapt out, and we was rocket motor booster thrillers, which are kind of exotic zombie dance that launches muscle mutant missiles at you and crushes you under its spine. But I had expected this, and I did a feint by which I pretended to be exploded to bits, and then killed them all easily. It was a great look on the face of the lead guy who was mad about the bog, and I'm like, whatever. Puppers, I'm going to make these earth kidneys with your mystic power, and I'm going to use Tommy Psycho principles to make them the same size. And they're like, but they couldn't do anything about it, because they were dead, and it exploded. I invested them with ease, as I mentioned earlier. So I like strode the thing and fixed up the tunnel, and then we went up to the surface. My work here was done, and so I puddled for years, and I kept puddling, and I didn't know why. When I finally saw a Teresa surgeon, he removed the stump, and I had become ever after as a source of relief for many birds who like to perch upon my branches was in my branches. They dig a hole onto the middle of my branches and perch in them, not just upon them, and I was like not prepared for that. But I found this cool psychokinetic repellation mechanism method by which I just popped them all out of the holes they did in my branches with their beaks using super psychic kinetic energy. I mentioned that, yeah, it's like a little piston of air in each hole that I installed was a giant compressed air tank. But I tell myself it's misty power because these perching birds that perch, not just upon, but within my branches, you see to them, it is high splatter sparrows up and down the block, right? Because they ain't perching within my branches, I'm not going to allow it, and I don't think you should allow it either. So I want you to send all your resources to the no perching within a branch bird, chucking out with compressed air league. They're super. They've only had a couple of them have their own films, but the studio is hoping they can come together in a league almost immediately, and everyone's going to be on board because it cost hundreds of millions of dollars and was a disaster in production start to finish. So it's probably going to help the world more than building a bunch of schools would. And for my next step, I will be exploding all my dromedaries, which thankfully for animal lovers across the globe, I do not have.